Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished lawyer turned entrepreneur from Wales, UK, Georgia Thomas. Georgia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ash. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Georgia is the CEO of eStudios. She's the co-founder of the VentureHaus Group, and she's a UK qualified solicitor and an entrepreneur. So, Georgia, I'm sure you've been asked this question many times, but what was the turning point that made you leave corporate law and step into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so it is a strange situation. It wasn't something super planned in my mind, or it wasn't a big dramatic moment.
Hmm.
Um, I was, I have a husband, his name is Gavin, and he too
Mm.
is an entrepreneur. So I was helping him with his businesses and just sort of getting a taste of entrepreneurship. And during a time when he got really, really busy, I took a 9 month career break to help him with his businesses. So my intention was that I would take some time out of my legal career. I would help him organize legally his businesses and that I would go back to law. And that was what I was sort of contracted to
Mm.
do. I was only approved for a 9 month career break. And during that 9 months, one of the businesses, which has now become eStudios, my agency,
Mm.
that that business had started to kind of go in the wrong direction. The team weren't aligned. It wasn't my husband's main focus, and him and I had sort of founded that business together, but he was supposed to be leading the show, so to speak. And that business at the beginning was sort of more focused on in-person
Hmm.
recording, almost like podcast recording. And during that 9 month career break, not only was I helping him with his businesses on the legal side, I started to just completely revamp this business.
Mm.
So when I was actually going back to law at the end of my 9 month career break, I'd actually completely rebuilt that business from scratch. Like
Mm.
I'd gotten rid of the whole team, I'd restarted the whole business in a completely different direction.
Mm.
And so I was going back to my career with an established business, and it was already completely operational, and it already reached six figures. So I
Mm.
kind of went back to law, and I was almost feeling that tug that a lot of like people who transition out of careers into entrepreneurship feels. I was in that place between, oh, this is the career I've worked so hard for, and
Mm.
oh, I really love this new business now. So I was feeling that tug, but when I went back to law, I was then juggling the two. So I was juggling being back in corporate law, which is extremely fast paced,
Hmm.
a busy career in and of itself.
Yeah.
And also, like now, this business had become a passion project, a baby of
Mm.
kind. So I was literally trying to juggle the two. And it reached December, Christmas time, so a few years ago now, and Christmas time 2023. So go back a few years, and here I was thinking to myself, I can't keep doing both. And I
Mm.
feel that my energy is best spent now 100% into this business because I could see that it was taking off. I could see that it was thriving.
Mm.
And it was kind of a tug in the direction of I can do this and I want to do this more so than wanting to leave law, but knowing that, ultimately in my bigger grand scheme plan of life, I wanted to have freedom and I wanted to have flexibility and I wanted to have the freedom to travel. And so I knew in one sense, even though I was letting go of my career, which I did love, I was stepping into something which
Mm.
would allow me to have the balance and
Very
freedom that I
interesting.
wanted in
Sure,
life.
sure. So
Yeah.
tell me about eStudios. What are the kind of work you do at eStudios?
Yeah, so we've evolved over time. We are a digital agency, but our main package we deliver now is a in-house media division. So we will work with top founders, top brands. We plug directly into their existing marketing operations, and we offer all the typical media support in terms of like video editing and graphic design.
Mm.
We also support by basically plugging in our different social media divisions, everything from Instagram and TikTok to podcasts and brand building. So we plug in our different divisions, and
Mm,
then I, as CEO, and our CMO provide overarching strategy on how they can basically grow their
mm,
offers. So we work with
mm,
brands with established offers that they're seeking to scale.
mm. So, and based on the work that you do with so many founders, what are some of the common mistakes a lot of founders make when they're trying to scale?
Yeah. So there's two things that happen. One is founders often feel there's two type of founders. Founders that want to be in front of the camera, founders that don't. A lot of brands these days do benefit from having a founder-led brand.
Mm,
So sometimes what mistakes founders are making is they're not clear on who their intended client is. They're not clear on what their client actually like their intended client avatar, what they actually need. So
mhm,
sometimes they're selling to the wrong person when they actually have a complete different skill set that they or service that they want to sell to their perfect client. So
mhm,
sometimes they're asking the wrong questions, which is leading them down the wrong path. So the content they're putting out doesn't demonstrate the actual skill set and their like industry experience that they actually
mhm,
have. What we do is we basically help them reconstruct their brand message in a
mm,
way that will relay to the people that they're trying to reach. So we help them figure out what is it that they're trying to help people do, and we make that translatable via social media to the people that they're really trying to target.
mm,
The other thing is that there's so many systems out there, there's so many ways that you can convert traffic, and people are sometimes getting lost in all of that. So they've got so
mm,
much stuff happening, but it's not actually working. So what we do is we do like a 90-day diagnostic to kind of break through the noise of what the founders are doing wrong and help them
mm,
kind of convert their trafficking the correct way. But
mm.
oftentimes people confuse visibility with leverage, and
Correct.
then they confuse hustle with progress. So,
Mm,
a big thing that I believe and I try and help my clients through is that social media shouldn't be a full-time job. And you as a business owner, you didn't give up, you didn't start a business, or if you're like me and gave up a career, you didn't do that to get stuck into 16-hour, 18-hour working days. So it's
mm,
about like figuring out how can you make your brand visible without working ridiculous hours or overworking, using your time really wisely to prioritize the things that are actually going to give you an ROI.
mm. Great response. Thank you. Why do so many founders resist delegating even when they know they should?
That's such a good question. I think what it is, and after speaking to quite a few founders about this
Mm,
very question and know the struggle myself, when you launch a business, when you invest so much time, oftentimes founders have invested a lot of capital as well into the
mhm,
business, into the startup. It feels like an extension of yourself. And so what can happen is there's like this fear that maybe the quality will drop or money's going to get wasted or things that are going to happen are going to take it in a different direction that you never wanted.
mm,
Also, there's this strange phenomenon that all founders tend to feel, even though they cannot be all things to their business and they will need other skill sets. They get into this trap of just thinking, I'm the only one who knows how to do this.
mm,
And so they end up doing everything and they think if I'm not going to do it, it's not going to get done. But
mm,
that's where basically they fall into that trap and they do end up working those ridiculously long days and their
mm,
business often is stunted because I was speaking to a consultant once who helps founders basically,
mm,
and she was saying the issue with business growth often once they've got to a certain level isn't the business, it's the founder because the
mm,
founder is trying to do everything themselves. And I completely relate with that. And what they need to do instead
mm,
is to empower people in their organization to thrive. And they can do that in a measured way when delegating to
mm,
enable people to succeed. Do it in small tasks to begin with, but ultimately, the more you delegate out, the more time you've got to focus on the things that give you the ROI.
mm,
So
mm,
you don't want to be doing tasks that can be delegated. You want to
mm.
be doing tasks that really move the needle in your business.
Well said. Tell me, what does intentional leadership look like in practice?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a mum now, so I had a little girl.
Congratulations.
She's now 20 months old, so she's coming up for 2. And
Mm,
it feels like yesterday, but at the same time, I feel like I've evolved a lot in that time. And for me, intentional leadership now looks like building for success and what
Mm-hmm.
success looks like for me is
Mm-hmm.
about having balance, about having structure,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that in the moments when I step away, things aren't going to break, they're going to continue on as they would have if I was there. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I've had to go on that journey of being intentional in my leadership. And that probably brings me back to the first question you asked, which is like, how did I get here? And
Mm-hmm.
I got here because I'd just finished law, I'd exited law, I'd started my business. Well, my business had already begun. I'd started full time in my business. I'd finished my career in law. And just 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a big turning point for me in realizing that as I'm currently operating, because as soon as I finished law, I just went all in into my business and I was
Mm-hmm.
doing everything and I was micromanaging. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to. It's just
Mm-hmm.
because I was so passionate about that business. I was excited. I was really full of energy to make it succeed. And I could see myself going all in for the next few years. Just this was going to be my everything. And when I found out I was pregnant, I realized I'd always wanted to be present when I had a baby. I always wanted that to be the most important thing. And so it was the nudge I needed to realize that intentional leadership looked like a business that could run without me and could allow me time off during my maternity leave, and one that when I was ready, I'd be able to jump back into and I wouldn't fall back into the trap of doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I'd lead as the visionary and CEO with structure on and doing those tasks that really did move the
Mm-hmm.
needle.
Well said. How can founders pursue ambition without a burnout? And that's a very common problem most founders face.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think, oh, well, me and my husband, we have very different ways of working.
Mm-hmm.
He is much more inclined to fall into that trap, and not that he gets burnt out, but he works long hours. Now, I want to say that sometimes your workload does demand it, and business runs in seasons, right? So I've had seasons where I've been fully removed. I've been able to enjoy maternity leave with my daughter. We've also had seasons where we've onboarded lots of new clients all at once. Everything's kicking off, we're changing things and we're hiring new staff. And in those busy seasons,
Mm-hmm.
you do end up finding out that you're back in a bit of a trap for a season where you're working more hours and you're doing more. For me, the biggest thing is not about burnout so much, but realizing what is like your definition of ambition. What is your definition of a
Right.
success? And like for myself, now that we have a daughter, we're a family. It's not enough to
Hmm.
just make lots of money and it's not enough to just like work loads of hours because we have to be present for our daughter. So for us, success and ambition looks like balance. It looks like hours carved out, which is my time with my daughter, my husband time with our daughter, our time together with our daughter, our time together without our daughter when she's with her
Hmm.
grandparents. So it's all these things that make up what your definition of a successful life is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think once you've nailed down what your definition of a successful life is, you're able to be more structured in how you work around your day, how you make your days work for you. One of the things, like I always say, and how can you avoid burnout, is you need to look at your organization and all the things that you're currently doing in your organization. And
Mm-hmm.
me and my CEO, we like to do this task where we create the structure chart of what's actually happening, and then we put the names in the seats of like who's doing what.
Hmm.
So when you do that, sometimes as like the CEO or the founder, you find that your name is in so many boxes.
Hmm.
And for example, your name could be in payroll. Well, there might be a service online for a nominal fee that would
Hmm.
relieve that job off of you and
Hmm.
the time pressure and the cost is like minimal. Equally, there might be people in your team who have capacity and you're doing jobs that they could be doing. So sometimes that exercise really helps you just understand, okay, like how am I leading this business? Who's doing what?
Hmm.
And could some people be carrying more? Is there a software or an app that could basically do that task for me? And
Hmm.
how do I remove myself from the things that other people could do? Sometimes cost is an issue, but there are cost-effective ways that you
Hmm.
can even delegate through softwares and apps. So I would just say, like, trying not to hit the point of burnout by being more structured in your approach. It's really going to help avoid that. And like I said, business goes in ebbs and flows. There's seasons where it is really busy. For me,
Mm,
like I've been in a really busy season recently as
mm,
we scaled, as we've onboarded new clients. And what I've been constantly saying to our COO and our CMO is I'm happy to commit this for a season, but ultimately someone else can fulfill this job at some
mm,
point.
mm,
So it's about figuring out like which bits can you carry for a little while and how long are you willing to carry them for before you can delegate
mm,
them out.
Amazing. And if someone feels overwhelmed and stuck in operations, what is the first step you would recommend to them?
Well, I think if you're the founder and you're stuck in the day-to-day operations, and that means that you're doing all the selling, you're doing all the actual strategic work for your clients, you're then leading the business operationally, it may be
Mm,
time to hire someone. For me, that's where I was at that point when I'd finished law and I just found out I was pregnant. And I probably wouldn't have hired like a head of operations that quick had I not
mm,
been pregnant. But because I was pregnant and I knew I wanted to be present with this baby, I knew I needed an operator to come into my business. Now, depending on how much like capital you have in the business, I actually paid my head of operations more than I'd ever paid myself in the
mhm,
business. So it was like that place where also founders can find really hard, which is, okay, I really need to remove myself from this business so that I can focus on other things. Maybe that's family, maybe that's another venture you have, maybe it's a passion project, whatever it might be. You may feel that nudge. And I spoke to a founder recently, and she was saying that exact same thing. She's got a successful business. The
mm,
business is doing well, but it's not doing amazing. And she was scared to kind of do that letting go. I think sometimes you do have to have a little faith, just the same faith that you had when you started that business
yeah,
and you
yeah.
stepped out on a whim and you said, I'm going to make this a business and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You need
Mm,
to have that same faith that you can hire someone to take over the reins of the day-to-day operations, and you're going to step into whether that's like full CEO mode or maybe those other things that I mentioned. You need to basically be willing to like let go a little bit, and that can be really hard. But what you
mm,
can do is you can create frameworks, you can create SOPs, you can create guidelines, you can create checks and balances so that when you are delegating to your head of operations, you're
mm,
empowering them, but you're giving them every chance of success. And
mm,
you just create a way that you can always check in with them. Like
mm,
at the beginning, when I first brought my head of operations on, I worked with him directly for that 6 months before I had the baby. So every single day I was with him, he was shadowing me, I was giving him little tasks one by one that he would take ownership over. To the point that by the end of the 6 months, which it was quite nice because we had a very clear deadline, there was no way that was going to change.
mhm,
It was like, the baby's coming now, you are going to have to take over and lead the shots. But
mm,
we stayed in touch. He could contact me whenever he needed to. We had a scheduled weekly call. That was his chance to come to me to ask any questions as well. And
mm,
at that point, it wasn't just also about empowering him to lead as like the head of operations. I had other people in my team. I had client managers. I had SEO strategist. And during that 6 months, the exact same thing happened with them, where maybe in the past I'd been like checking every piece of work or micromanaging a little bit. And bit by bit, I slowly started to say, hey, I'm actually not going to check this anymore. I want
mm,
you to do it, and I believe you can do it. And I said, come to me if you want me to check it. That
mm,
instantly put the responsibility on them instead of it being on me. The truth is, when you are micromanaging, when you are like cross-checking every single thing your team
mm,
do, it actually takes a bit of responsibility away from them. And what that does is it means that they don't operate 100% because they always think it's going to be checked,
yeah,
like someone's going to check
mm,
this.
mm,
And if you take that check-in process away, you empower them actually to succeed. Now you do that gradually. You don't have to do it all at once.
mm,
First off, you can just like give them guidance and you can suggest changes. That's what I would do. I would do changes in tracks so they could see the changes. Then I stepped away from doing that and said, look, I'm gonna check it once it's out. So I would check it as it was live for the client and I would review it and then I would suggest feedback.
mm,
And eventually I was like, hey, I don't need to check this anymore, but you come to me if you have anything that you need help with. So by the end of the 6 months, it wasn't just my head of operations who had been empowered, it was like the whole team.
mm,
And that sort of equipping and empowering approach to leadership, I think, is what enables your team to succeed and
yeah.
enables you to succeed as the founder.
Great response. Time for a few more questions, Georgia. And the next few ones are for you personally now. You run an eight-figure venture group with your husband.
Yeah.
How do you balance marriage and a business partnership?
Still a journey. I
Hmm.
will say we're figuring that out every single step of the way.
Hmm.
We're fortunate in that our businesses grew quite fast and we'll be married 5 years this
Hmm.
December. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And it's all happened in the 5 years, really. I think it's a how we balance it is just exactly what I was saying. We've actually recently decided that we're gonna have like real structure to our days in the sense that we're only going to talk about business between the hours of 10 and 5. And after that, those times it's okay for us to talk. We're going to be talking as normal, but it's like we're not going to talk about hard stuff
Yeah.
outside of those hours. That's
Hmm.
going to create some space for us to just like decompress and rejuvenate so that we're not always feeling on edge. The other thing is, my husband and I, we're both high capacity individuals. So we're both able to operate at that level. But now that we have a daughter, it's about protecting her peace as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So it's about being really strategic and really intentional about
Hmm.
not letting business bleed into our family time and kind of vice versa. Like it's equally important that we respect the times when the other person's working so that they're not like burdened with like family pressures when they're trying to work as well. So
Hmm.
when I was a lawyer, you have to like bill your hours, right? So
Yeah.
you would record your time in 6 minute increments. So I learned to work really efficiently, and that's just the skill you learn as a lawyer. I've been passing that skill on to my husband. So there's loads of things you can do, but
Hmm.
time blocking is one of the greatest ways that you can be efficient in your business.
Hmm.
So making sure that you set like clear time blocks in your day where you're going to accomplish certain tasks,
Yeah.
even on like a personal level. I saw something recently that was basically like a businesswoman was saying like I run my home like I run my business, and I realized at times we've been running our home like in a bit of chaos, and we've been running our businesses like strategically and operationally, and it's almost like we've had to kind of put a few strategic structure into our home life to
Hmm.
enable us to like have that peace. And that probably sounds to some people a little bit like, oh, that seems too organized and too
Hmm.
structured. But we've found that's helping us thrive
Yeah.
as a family by having
Hmm.
those structured blocks of time, and then the same for business. So that's what we do, and I'm sure for everyone it's different. I'm also very intentional about my daughter's time, so I don't have like professional childcare all the time, and I want to be present with her. I have wonderful grandparents who help with her regularly,
Hmm.
and so for me, whenever she's with her grandparents or whenever she's not with me, I make sure that I'm like really intentional about getting everything that I need to be get done
Hmm.
finished and making sure that I time block. My team know when I'm available, they know when they have access to me. I have the set same week meetings every week as touch points with them. And
Hmm.
then what I do is I'm really intentional then about every time that I'm with my daughter being present, being available, because for me that's how she will thrive. So, and that's the most important thing for me. So
Very
I think
interesting.
it's just about making sure
Yeah.
that like you're really intentional with that time blocking.
Yeah, absolutely. Time for one more question for you. Georgia, you're building your personal brand as a thought leader. What matters most when you are positioning yourself authentically?
Yeah. For me, I want my personal brand to be a representation of myself. I want it
Mm.
to be truthful over tactics. I think because I have a media agency, I know the exact tactics to grow an account. I know the exact tactics that I could use or the content I could produce that would make it me blow up online because I've done it for other clients.
Mm-hmm.
But um, the truth is like I want my brand to be a representation of all that I am and who I am as a person, not just as the CEO of each studio. So I'm trying
Mm.
to build a brand that is authentic without oversharing. I'm trying to make sure that it shares the honest truths of leadership, which is
Mm.
like sometimes it is those peaks and those troughs. Sometimes it is harder than it looks, and sometimes you don't see like you see the beauty of like a successful business. You don't see the hard work in the background, the sleepless nights, or
Sure.
especially as a mother, balancing the two. So I'm trying to share my journey authentically. I only restarted sharing my story again, like on a personal brand level this year. I took a 2 year break from social media myself, and
Hmm.
now that I'm kind of getting back into it, I'm trying to make sure it doesn't flood into my everyday life. I don't fall into the trap that I try to help my own clients escape from.
Mm.
But definitely trying to make sure that it's something that if you're a founder, or if you're a mother, or if you're someone trying to consider leaving your career, that my content will hopefully be something you can relate to, and it will help you on that journey.
Fascinating. And on that note, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this one has been with you. Thank you for talking to me about your own incredible journey. I just love the way you uh, seem to have seamlessly transitioned from being a UK qualified solicitor to such a successful entrepreneur. And yet you seem to have your feet firmly on the ground, managing not just your business and your team, but also your family. And you seem to have found an amazing balance with your husband as well. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ash. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.